Good evening, wanderers of the unknown. It's your host, Timothy, coming to you from my serene farm and welcoming you back to another episode from our ghostly broadcast. Today, we venture across borders as I share with you 3 haunting tales from our global listeners. Remember, these are their experiences, their truths. Turn down your lights, lean in closer, and let their stories whisk you away with our first story. Our first story. Hi Timothy, I'm Maria from a small town in Mexico. I need to share a chilling experience I had at my parents' house one rainy afternoon. This encounter is still etched in my heart, and it fuels my every nightmare. I went to pick up my kids from my parents' house late in the afternoon. The weather had taken a turn for the worse, with overcast clouds and light drizzles making everything seem subdued and gloomy. Tired and wanting to escape the bad weather, I decided to stay at my parents' house a bit longer. Gathering my kids, we headed upstairs to the 3rd floor. My kids played around while I decided to take a nap in my parents' bedroom, intending just to rest my eyes for a bit. Not long into my nap, I felt a cold tug on my ankle. I jerked awake, looking around the dim room, blaming it on a nightmare. But the room was quiet, only the soft patter of rain outside the window breaking the silence. I breathed in relief, chalking it up in my imagination, and dozed off again. The feeling repeated. This time it was a harder pull on my leg. Panic surged through me as I looked around. It was real, it was happening. I wanted to scream, but my voice got lost in the thick lump of terror lodged in my throat. Despite no sign of anyone in the room, the atmosphere hung heavy with a dark, palpable menace. Just then, a chilly breeze snaked its way in, and the curtains fluttered alarmingly against the stark silhouette of the window. I knew then I was not alone. Overtaken by mortal fear, I sat up straight in the bed, my legs instinctively tucking under me. In the gloom of the room, from the corner of my eyes, I saw a shadowy old woman's figure. It stood at the foot of the bed, an ominous, towering presence, just out of my direct sight. Terrified, I dared not to turn my head. The figure was still, its presence filling the room with cold dread. That's when a flash of lightning lit the room, and my blood ran cold. There at the window, illuminated in the harsh white light, was a man's face, the wet, gaunt face pressed against the glass, mouth curving into a smile that didn't reach his cold, staring eyes. I was paralyzed. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. A cold terror washed over me, runic in its intensity. This was no dream. The fear was real, the man was real, and he was here. The image of the face was etched into my terror-stricken consciousness, a blight never to be forgotten. Once the initial shock wore off, survival instincts kicked in. I had become prey within my own parents' home. Summoning all my courage, I forced myself off the bed and bolted out of the room, leaving the sinister figure behind me. I rushed down the stairs, my heart pounding in sync with each hurried step. In the living room, my kids were innocently playing, oblivious to the terror that had unfolded upstairs. I corralled them quickly, not wanting to alarm them. With trembling hands and a racing heart, I ventured to look out the window, half expecting to see the man there. But all I saw was the dark night, the world outside innocently ignorant of the horrors within. As I forced my kids into their coats and shoes, I could still feel those cold eyes on me. The terror had seeped into the house, tainting my family's safe haven. Barely acknowledging my parents, I ushered my kids out in the rain, rushing to the safety of our own home. The rain may have been cold, but it was nothing compared to the icy terror of that room. Months later, while sitting down for dinner at my parents' house, I finally managed to confide in them about the horrific encounter. The conversation fell silent as I relayed my story. Their reaction was far from expected, a humbling acceptance rather than surprise. They admitted they too had experienced similar inexplicable events, silently living with this uninvited presence. Though scary, the experiences were reportedly harmless, and they felt there was nothing much they could do about it. It became a chilling secret our family shared, a reminder of the unknown mysteries that the world still holds. Our second story. My name is Lina, a curious journalist hailing from London. My journey led me to an antiquated hotel buried deep in the heart of Ecuador. It's here that my seemingly normal travel assignment morphed into an unforgettable encounter with darkness itself. Upon checking in, I was warned about the hotel's eccentricities. Among them, the most peculiar of all was the hotel's third floor, a floor absent of all light. Decades-old rumors murmured of a ghastly incident that led to its abandonment. Now, an eerie silence shrouds it, and the hotel staff refer to it as El Piso Sin Luz, the lightless floor. Being a journalist, my curiosity was piqued. I was intrigued, yet apprehensive about what stories it might hold. Over time, my curiosity outweighed my caution, and a strange desire brewed within me to uncover the truth. In the coming days, I started to notice odd occurrences. Each time I took the creaky old elevator, regardless of my selected floor, it curiously stopped at the third floor. It was as if the hotel itself was tricking me into a bizarre, silent invitation. Despite the growing anxiety and fear, a part of me was allured by the mystery. One evening, I was returning late from a local expedition when the elevator jerked to a sudden stop. The dim bulb flickered, and the elevator car fell eerily silent once more. It was the third floor. A shiver ran down my spine, but my heart thumped in excitement. Remembering the receptionist's warnings, I momentarily hesitated. But the journalist in me was persistent. With a deep breath and a flicker of courage, I decided to force it. As the doors creaked open, I was greeted by an unnerving stillness. The blanketing darkness seemed to stifle any remnants of reason or rational thought. As I stood there, teetering on the edge of the known and the unknown, I could feel a chill creeping in from the unseen veil beyond. Throwing caution to the wind, I cautiously stepped out, the absolute darkness swallowing me whole. I groped blindly, my eyes struggling to adapt to the tangible blackness. But the eerie emptiness was disorienting. A cold breeze seemed to pass through me, and I faltered, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Suddenly, I heard a whisper, soft, almost non-existent, like a sigh caught in the wind. It was so subtle that I almost thought I imagined it. But then it came again, more distinct this time, followed by another and another, until it seemed like the darkness itself was trying to communicate. A profound terror set in, but I was frozen in my spot, unable to move. Suddenly, the whispers grew in volume and intensity, multiplying uncontrollably, as though the darkness was angered by my intrusion. These hushed voices became deafening, pulsating through the darkness around me. It was an otherworldly cacophony that sent chills down my spine. I started to run, panic gripping me as I fumbled in the dark, desperate to make it back to the elevator. Feeling myself locked in a nightmarish chase, the whispering chorus grew louder and more chaotic with every step. It felt as though the darkness itself was alive, pursuing me relentlessly through the blackened veil. I could sense an unfathomable presence closing in, its invisible hands grasping at my heels. Each whisper echoed a dire warning. "You shouldn't have come," it hissed, its breath icy against my neck. In frantic desperation, I blindly stumbled along the unending hall, my terror echoing the whispering voices. My hand brushed against the cold metallic frame of the elevator. I hastily pressed the button, pleading for the steel cage of safety to allow me inside. The whispers evolved into gut-wrenching screams, unseen fingers clawing at me from the abyss. Finally, the elevator jolted into life. The doors grudgingly opened, and I scrambled inside, my trembling fingers slapping the close door button repeatedly. As the doors began to close, I felt a blast of icy air, and the whispers momentarily intensified before the doors finally sealed off the silent world of darkness beyond. Safe within the confines of the elevator, I sunk to the floor, my heart pounding an uneven tattoo against my ribcage. The precipitous silence of the descent was a horrific contrast to the cacophony I had left behind. When I finally let myself into my room, the relief was short-lived. The light suddenly flickered and went out, hurling me back into a world devoid of light. From the abyss, a single voice emerged, this time right next to my ear, whispering, "You shouldn't have come. Whatever resided on the third floor, I had brought it back with me." In the darkness of my room, I felt a sinking dread seeping into me, realizing I had stepped into a realm best left untouched. The uncanny whispers still echoing in my ears, I couldn't help but wonder if the lightless floor was deliberately shrouded in darkness, not to seal off some old tragedy, but rather to keep something from venturing into the light. I left the hotel the next morning, but a piece of that chilling experience stayed with me. A haunting reminder of the night I crossed boundaries and invoked something from the Piso Sin Luz. Our third story. Hi, Timothy. I'm Isabel, a travel enthusiast from Peru. A bizarre experience once held me captive in an older hotel of Lima, one that people speak about in hushed whispers, even in broad daylight. To this day, the chilling incident haunts my dreams. It's time to share my story. It was during an exhausting backpacking trip through South America when I stopped in Lima. I was drawn to this charming but worn-out hotel, oozing antiquity and mystery from every brick. It was quaint and in dire need of some tender, loving care, but it was cheap, and for a weary wanderer like me, seemed like the perfect respite. Having checked in late in the evening, the tired staff handed me a room key without uttering a word about my room's peculiar location. The room number was 37, but the elevator buttons did not go beyond 36. I shrugged it off. A mere technical glitch, I assumed. As the rustic elevator clanked to a halt at the 36th floor, I stepped out into a dimly lit hallway. Using the stairway next to the elevator, I ascended one more flight and was greeted by the peculiar sight of a lone door. Number 37. The thought of having an entire floor all to myself felt oddly luxurious at first. However, as night fell, strange occurrences began to unfold, sending shivers coursing down my spine. Soft whispers filled the air intermittently, accompanied by the clinking of glasses and distant laughter, as if a party was underway in the hall. Gathering up my courage, I opened my door to join what seemed like a fun gathering. To my shock, instead of the expected barrage of merry hotel guests, an empty and shrouded in darkness hallway greeted me. The unmistakable echoes of a party resonated in the stark emptiness, sending waves of trepidation rippling through me. I shut the door hastily, narrowing my eyes as I tried to make sense of the blood-chilling sounds. Confidence ebbing, my adventurous spirits started to waver as I found myself enveloped in an eerie solitariness that seemed to stretch beyond the scope of perceived reality. I resolved to leave my room, intent on seeking help, or at least some answers. As I stepped into the hallway, the sounds intensified. Muffled laughter echoed around me, a chaos of glassware clinking loudly, and the inexplicable rush of party chatter grew into a deafening cacophony. I frantically pushed the elevator button, but it remained unresponsive. Feeling a chill creep up my spine, I turned towards the stairs, my only way out. As I descended, the silence returned abruptly, save for the echo of my own hurried steps against the stone-cold concrete stairs. An irrational fear crawled into my veins. The number on the floors were repeating. It was as if I were trapped in a never-ending loop, going round and round. 36, 37, 36, 37, like a warped, non-ending nightmare. The panic surged. My breathing turned heavy as icy tendrils of dread enveloped me. I stumbled, my attempt to run turning into a desperate, frenzied sprint. It was a staircase that echoed with macabre laughter, a hellish, endless passage to nowhere, an impossible architectural anomaly. An amorphous terror had me in its grasp, the world around me twisted and unreal. In an adrenaline-fueled frenzy, I continued my futile attempt to escape this nightmarish loop. The repeated numbers on the stairwell seemed to mock me, their painted forms blurring in the sickly yellow light as tears welled up in my eyes. Fear morphed into terror as I stumbled down the steps, the laughter and whispers getting louder, echoing in the enclosed space like a cacophonous symphony from a forgotten time. Every turn led me back to the 36th floor, the cold reality of my situation setting in. I was trapped, stuck in a chilling vortex, a prisoner of this ghostly hotel. The air felt heavy, each drawn breath a struggle. I could feel the choking grip of panic leading me into a darkness where reality and illusion melded into one. The walls seemed to close in, the echoes growing more maddening by the second. I became lightheaded, the world spinning as the culmination of my physical and psychological terror tipped me over the edge. My steps faltered, my knees buckling under the weight of the horror. Everything went dark as I succumbed to the creeping unconsciousness. When I awoke, I was lying in the hotel's lobby, the concerned staff hovering over me. They claimed I had fainted upon my arrival, my words about the party upstairs making no sense. It was as though time had folded onto itself, trapping me in an abyss for hours that never existed. My terrifying night in room 37 remained unproven, a chilling enigma forever imprinted on my psyche. I left Lima the very next day, bearing an unsettling tale no one would believe, a runaway backpacker forever haunted by an unthinkable night at a nondescript hotel. It's been an ethereal journey tonight. I'm your host, Timothy, and I thank you for joining me on these haunting voyages. If tonight's tale sent chills down your spine and left you yearning for more, please give this video a like. Subscribe and click that bell icon to ensure you never miss another ghostly tale from our global collection. Remember, here at Ghostly Broadcast, every echo has a voice. Until our next encounter, stay curious and keep listening.